I'm really glad to be here with you guys today, sharing a little bit of cause marketing insight. And I did title this Cause Marketing 101 because this is a whole big, giant issue space, consumer space, brand space that we could have 47 webinars on and still not really dig into everything as much as possible and gain all the knowledge and insights to be successful. So what I'm going to share with you over the next little period of time is a lot of high-level things to get you started thinking, like Amber mentioned, wherever you are in your cause marketing journey, whether you are on the brand side, whether you're at an agency looking to start some of these initiatives with the brands that you work for, trying to make it a bit of a broad appeal so that as we go through the next couple of webinars together, we'll be able to dig in deeper in a little bit of those areas. And as Amber also mentioned, if there's something that I touch on during this that you want to know more about, have questions about, write them down, stick them in the Q&A. I'll be able to chat with you guys at the end of this. And then who knows, there might even be something that one of you guys brings up that is like, oh, we need to do a whole nother webinar deep dive on that. So, keep your mind open and keep the questions coming. So Cause Marketing 101, what it is, what it's not, and how to get it right. That's where we're going to start today. Cause marketing, as you guys know, is everywhere. The big Gillette commercial from earlier this year that they actually just recently pulled back, that they're not going to be talking about toxic masculinity anymore because they took a $5 billion loss this year. Not going to talk about that one because it's been talked about to death, but that is an example of cause marketing. Or Lacoste, how they were putting the different little animals, endangered animals on their shirts at part of the Save Our Species campaign. Sephora, beer brands, beauty brands, toy brands, sports brands. Cause marketing is very literally everywhere. But what is it really? Because there are so many different definitions that are flying around, and none of them are wrong. But it's always helpful to get with a group of people and align on a common set of definitions for these kinds of things. So what is cause marketing? And can it make a tangible difference in your company's bottom line and help change the world for the better? Those are really the two things that cause marketing is designed to do. So this is me, Amy Small. I'm the VP of Creative and Brand Strategy, and I work for MediaCause. We are a small-ish agency. There's about 32 of us in 4 offices across the country, and we're a little bit different than your typical agency because we only work for nonprofits and mission-driven orgs. I joined MediaCause and opened our Atlanta office last year, so last February, and came with over 15 years of brand experience working at big agencies throughout Atlanta and the Southeast. And one of the most fascinating things in coming over from the brand world to the nonprofit world is there's so much similarity, but there are so many differences, and I don't think we, on both sides, take enough of an opportunity to really work together to do some good. So I have seen everything from both sides of the space. I've led the charge on the brand side where you guys, I think most of you guys are probably sitting right now, whether you're brand or agency. And one of the big things is that social responsibility, corporate social responsibility, taking a stand on issues is no longer a nice to have. It used to be a bonus for brands. It is not anymore. It is critical to success. And there are studies upon studies that are showing consumers are demanding this from the brands that they buy into and buy from. So in a couple of recent studies, 78% of consumers believe that companies have to do more than make money. They have to positively impact society. 77%, nearly the same, say that a brand's values can be their sole purchase decision maker. So whether you are a product at shelf or you are a SaaS and somebody's deciding whether to use you or a competitor, what you stand for can make that difference between whether they buy or not. And that's huge. And 64% of people will go so far as to switch, avoid, or boycott a brand based on its stand on societal issues. So where you stand and the action that you're taking doesn't only have the potential for a positive impact, but your lack of playing in this space can really impact your brand in a negative way. How do we as brands and as marketers leverage these insights so that we're helping our businesses grow while also really doing what cause marketing is about, which is driving social change? We're going to explore. That's what today's all about. So a quick rundown of the agenda. I'm going to start by deconstructing cause marketing. I talked a little bit about the definitions, so many of them out there, but there are a couple key building blocks of what those definitions are, so we can all get aligned on the same page. I'm going to share some common approaches that you probably are familiar with and you've seen, just to be able to help you identify the different ways that brands go about approaching cause marketing, and start thinking about how your brands or your clients may be able to engage in some of those. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, and we'll see some of those through examples in the wild. And then we'll go through ingredients for how to get it right, since there will be a lot of examples of brands getting it wrong, as I'm talking about some of the ones today. So starting with shifting your thinking, and then 5 keys to actually driving cause marketing impact. Do a super quick 1-slide preview of what's to come next. Amber already alluded to it with our next webinar recap or preview, and then we'll open the floor to Q&A. So we'll jump right in to deconstructing cause marketing. There's a formula I like to use. This is the oversimplistic formula, but intent plus approach equals impact when you're thinking about anything in the cause space, whether it's just on the nonprofit side or it's nonprofit and brand. You have to be doing it for the right reasons, do it in the right way in order to make the right kind of impact. So we're going to start with that first piece of the puzzle. We're going to start with intent. Cause marketing is this giant paragraph of explanation, but there are a few really key words in here. Cause marketing is values driven, coming from the core of your organization and what you believe in. It is consumer engaging, meaning it needs a participatory element of an ongoing being a key word there, not short term, corporate social responsibility effort, in which a for-profit company leverages all of the things we're very familiar with, advertising, marketing, partnerships, PR, experiential, what have you, to do 2 key things: increase profitability and better society. So all of those things, right? Values, engaged consumers, ongoing long-term social responsibility, increase profitability, and better society. Those are all of the key elements of what cause marketing is. But sometimes we see situations where brands are a little fuzzy on that definition and get into the areas that cause marketing is not. Rather than being values driven and creating partnerships and activations that are really driven by what they believe in and what their consumers believe in, they become trend driven, jumping on the bandwagon of something that is a hot button issue in social media or pop culture, but really has no connection to the core of who they are as a brand. Instead of being consumer engaging, cause marketing is not consumer appeasing, and that goes back to the trend. Cause marketing doesn't work when it's just something that, again, you see a survey comes out that says X% of people want brands to be responsible for this, and so yay, now we're going to do it to appease our consumers. It's not short term. Cause marketing is not a one-time deal for any brand. Just like if you are thinking about changing your business model, shifting the way you work, shifting the way consumers perceive you, you can't expect to go out and change their minds overnight. You can't make a social impact overnight. And so cause marketing is not just a short-term gig. It also cannot be about just changing perception. If you are only doing it to get people to like your brand, to get more engagement, to get more social likes, it's going to fall flat on a lot of ends. And cause marketing is also not just talking about bettering society. Talk is cheap. Lots of people can do it. Not a lot of people can make the real impact. And it's the brands and organizations who are partnering together to make real impact are the ones who are actually going to get noticed and reap the benefits on both sides. So if we know what cause marketing is and what it's not and where the intent should be, the next piece of that is our approach, because our approach affects our outcome. So a quick disclaimer before I jump into some of the examples of approach that I'm going to share. A lot of this is personal opinion. And while it's, I will say it's an educated and experienced personal opinion, it's still opinion. And so that's subjective, right? Based on my point of view. However, what is not subjective when thinking about cause marketing is the impact. Impact is quantifiable, and that's something that we all need to make sure as we're thinking about how to roll out cause marketing campaigns, is thinking about the right success metrics, which we'll talk about later as well. So a few common approaches that we see in the wild of cause marketing. The first one is conversation starters. Another one, PR stunts. A term that I'm not sure if I made up or not, but calling it bilanthropy. Social swells, which is social media engagements. And then checkbook charity. So the first one we'll get into is conversation starters. And these are typically your big videos, commercials, these anthemic style pieces where a brand comes out and proudly beats its chest and announces their stand on an issue. And Oftentimes there is a literal CTA at the end of this spot that says, join the conversation with a hashtag. And that's it. It takes a lot of brand investment. Those are very high production value type pieces most of the time. And media spend, whether it's trying to get, whether it's actually, media placements or just the efforts to try and get coverage for it. But despite that big spend, there's usually very little actual social impact that comes out of these. And conversation starters are also the easiest approaches to be considered purpose washing. Because if they are not those things that we talked about, if they are not values driven and they are just jumping on a trend and it's a one and done kind of situation, consumers see through it really, really easily. This first example I'm going to share is pretty recent, and it is Nike with the U.S. women's national soccer team after they won the World Cup. Their never stop winning spot that I'm sure most of you have seen, since at the time that I put the slide together, it had almost 5 million views. It got a ton of PR. It was a wonderful brand sentiment. It was clearly on brand for Nike because they support, I'm doing air quotes, they support women's empowerment and winning and strength and being the best you can be and pushing beyond your limits. And so them celebrating the national team's win it would have been wrong if they hadn't. But the way they did it could have been done a little bit better. They were trying to start a conversation about women's sports equality and the power of women to do amazing things. But they didn't actually take any tangible action to address their issues. So during the tournament itself, they announced that the women's home jersey was the #1 best-selling soccer jersey ever sold on Nike.com. Amazing in terms of revenue. But they didn't use any of that revenue to support the issue that they were purporting to kind of stand for with all of their media. They didn't leverage that revenue and put it back to the soccer team or put it into youth soccer programs. So they actually came out and said, look how freaking great we are, and then did nothing else with it to help celebrate what they were talking about. What was even worse in my mind on this one was that their corporate policies were not aligned with what they were coming out to stand for. And this goes back to being values driven and being a long-term commitment. It came out very quickly after the spot that female athletes who were supported by Nike were losing their sponsorship money when they became pregnant. And so by no means what Nike was doing in starting a conversation reflected how they were actually operationalizing that position. They did come out, I believe last week and said that they were fixing that, but it shouldn't have taken that for a brand as big as Nike to be able to do it. And so when they come out and say they're taking a stand, from a cause marketing perspective, it's got to be backed up by what they're doing internally at the organization as well. Another conversation starter, a little bit more obscure, but it was from Audi in the Super Bowl in 2017. And it was a spot around equal pay. And it was a beautiful cinematography, a little girl doing a soapbox derby competition, being cheered on by her dad, taking over, winning against all the boys, doing a great job. At the end of the spot, it had a super that came up that said, progress is our purpose. We are committed to equal pay for equal work. And this has struck with me because my question on this one, again, a conversation starter, very easy to be seen as purpose washing, is where did that purpose come from? That we are committed, that Audi as the car manufacturer is committed to equal pay for equal work. Is it part of their brand ethos? Is it part of their core values? If you go poke around on their site, you can't find it anywhere. And it also got down to the hypocritical piece because of Audi's board has 6 men and 0 women on it. So very clear misalignment of what a brand does and what a brand says in the cause marketing space, and a very easy way to get people to not like you as much as you want them to. So the next category we're going to talk about is PR stunts. These are often linked to big cultural moments, to brand announcements, sometimes to promotional needs, or in a product category kind of sense, sales periods. And they can be physical stunts like events and experiences, or they can be digital stunts like campaigns, influencer outreach, innovative media buys, anything to essentially garner press coverage. A challenge with PR stunts is if they're not strategic, which there are many that are very well executed, but the ones that aren't totally thought through, there is a very high likelihood of them coming across as opportunistic. And that's where those two sides of the cause marketing coin, the increasing revenue and the bettering society, one gets out of balance with the other. This is a hilarious example that I ran across a couple of weeks ago. So it's from you may have heard of the brand Kills, which is a paint and primer brand. And they did an initiative called Every Dog is Worth It. So I saw this and my first reaction was, ew. I cringed a little because a brand called Kills with dogs, maybe not the best fit. But just in terms of the product category, paint and dogs, left me scratching my head a little bit. So what was this PR stunt? It's a digital campaign with a celebrity partnership angle, a partnership, and this home designer. And the idea was that they were going to build and auction 5 luxury dog retreats coated with Kills primer. And the campaign landing page and all of the press coverage about it was about how great the primer is at resisting mold and mildew and pesticide free and all of these things. And the correlation and the partnership with the ASPCA felt like a very awkward fitting shoehorned afterthought. It was a blatant product promotional kind of stunt. There were some benefits to the ASPCA. The proceeds from that auction and a whopping $20,000 got donated to the ASPCA from this effort. But when you try to take a promotional sales thing and shoehorn a cause into it, this is what happens. And it feels very disingenuous and also does not actually give much benefit back to the nonprofit that you're trying to partner with. On the other side of the coin, there are some really great PR stunts. So this is one from a retailer, grocery retailer. I don't know if it's ASDA or ASDA, but part of their brand ethos is, or it's a little bit of a newer part, but is talking about sustainability and the environment. They have their corporate sustainability initiative, which is removing lots of plastic packaging from its stores, eliminating plastic bags when they do delivery. And the latest piece of this was that they repaved one of their parking lots using 9,000 plastic bottles. So this was an example of a physical stunt versus a digital stunt, but with a wonderful added bonus of being useful. It wasn't tied to a sale on apples. It wasn't tied to a sweepstakes. It wasn't tied to driving people into the store. It was them actually activating on something that is going to do something good for the world. This one did not have a nonprofit partnership, but what it did very strongly is show the brand's commitment to this cause, to being environmentally responsible. And you can kind of tell that it wasn't necessarily sales driven, because you can't really attribute sales to something like this, to doing something good with the world and to doing a piece of utility. But the goodwill created by this kind of a PR stunt, when you're thinking about the cause marketing space, has far longer term ripple effects than a one-off kind of auction or sweepstakes. So social swells. Of course, things that happen on social. They're a great way to inspire consumer participation because of the two-way nature of the channel. And when done well, social is probably one of the strongest ways to get brand and social impact and reach your goals in both areas. It's also very easy to show real-time and cumulative results. So if you are trying to reach a certain goal of donations or of participants, that can be tracked and people can see how they're doing and they can feel really good about being part of that. But again, it comes back to using the right metrics. And so when you're thinking about social, participation is great, but people really want to know what that participation is going to turn into for the cause or the organization that you're supporting. The first example in this area is from The Body Shop, and The Body Shop is a really interesting brand example in general in the cause marketing space because they're a beauty brand, and beauty brands tend to play in the self-image, self-esteem space. Body Shop has a long-standing history of not playing in that space. They play in animal welfare and the environment and have a much stronger angle in that, which gives them a unique voice to start with. So they have these authentic brand values that are part of their bigger CSR efforts. They're all about even sustainable sourcing of the materials for their skincare lines. And what this Forever Against Animal Testing social campaign was, it leveraged influencers, which of course is great to do on social. It was authentic to their values. And what they were trying to do was gather signatures to bring legislature to end cosmetic animal testing. So this was actually an advocacy play by a brand. And what was lovely about it as well is social is one of the biggest areas, of course, that you can get a mass audience, but it wasn't just social. So they did involve influencers. They leveraged influencers across their channels. They did use multiple social channels, but they also took this to grassroots offline events and into their stores. So it was an advocacy play. And they got from this, from the sum total of their work, 8 million signatures on this piece of legislation, or to support this piece of legislation to end animal testing, with 1 million of those coming from their social efforts. And that's a pretty big deal. I was not able to find the impact of the legislation, whether the legislation passed, whether it sparked any other movements to try to do this. So I'm actually going to keep digging on that one because I'm curious. But brands getting into the advocacy space is not something you see all the time either. And that sticks out because that's saying that as a brand, we are putting more than just our name against this issue. We're really fighting for governmental organizational change. This next one is from Poland Spring, the water brand I'm sure you're all familiar with. And they did something just recently, earlier this month, with this Not Trash campaign. This was very interesting to me because this was born from a consumer insight. It wasn't a brand necessarily going and saying, ooh, I want to partner with an organization. I want to get on the bandwagon of this social cause. What can I do? They look to see, what do consumers need? And something that they learned is that people have a really hard time still knowing what plastics and what materials are recyclable and which are not. And so they created, in partnership with the Recycling Project, an Instagram photo-based hotline to essentially help people identify which items are recyclable and which aren't. Take a photo and hashtag not trash and tag at Poland Springs. So utility, again, kind of like the ASDA parking lot, they turned something into a utility, not just a conversation starter and not just a PR stunt. And some folks on their end in real time were answering questions. Yes, this thing is recyclable. No, this thing is not recyclable. Through their partnership with the Recycling Project, they also gave $150,000 to them. Very odd footnote that Nestle Waters USA was kicking in $2,500, which was like, why even mention it? I don't know. It's a very short-term run though. So I had a couple questions. Why was it only running for 11 days? My gut says it was a trial period and maybe they did not have the manpower capacity or the budget to be able to run it for longer. But I would love to know if it's successful. If it was successful, is this something that they would continue doing? And then another question I had around this is, how would Poland Spring and the Recycling Project account for the different recycling rules based on location? I think any of us who are here in Atlanta, or I'm sure anywhere around the country, know that recycling rules differ by community, by neighborhood, by county, by district. I may be able to recycle bottle caps in my house, but 2 neighborhoods down the block in another county may not be able to. So my curiosity here is how much Poland Spring worked directly with the Recycling Project to be able to understand some of those nuances. And that's a really critical component of doing a successful cause marketing campaign too, is as a brand or as an agency, not just going to the organization you want to partner with, oh, here's an idea, here's how we should execute it, but working with them as an actual partner, because they have a lot of knowledge in the issue space that you want to try to get into and try to champion, and let them help co-create what these initiatives are with you. And it'll be much more successful for all sides that way. This next one is Bilanthropy, and it is one of the original cause marketing approaches. So lots of different methods of this, different ways to execute it, different levels of brand investment. Money, the money impact is really easy to prove. Think about when you go to CVS and it says, would you like to donate $3 to the American Cancer Society or American Heart Society, American Heart Association? So the money is easy to prove. Cumulative stacks up real quick. But one of the things that some of these initiatives also need to do a little better is share the human impact story of what that money is actually going towards, so that we as consumers feel good about every time we are at the cash register being asked to give $3 more. So I'm going to walk through 3 different examples or 3 different types of bilanthropy. This first one is the buy one, give one model. This example is Bombas socks, but you may know it better from Tom's or the Warby Parker model. Buy a pair of shoes, give a pair of shoes. Warby Parker started out with buy a pair of glasses and we're going to donate a pair of glasses. The really lovely thing about this particular model and bilanthropy in general is that it feels good to us as consumers, right? It satisfies our need to give something back. We feel like, oh, I just got a cute pair of shoes for myself. Awesome. Oh, and it feels so good. It's heartwarming because I'm giving them to someone else too. So great check mark there. And it does help with brand affinity. But consumers are increasingly starting to look for metrics just beyond the surface. So Bombas here shows that there are over 24 million socks, one purchased, one donated. Where are the socks going? I would like to know that a little bit more up front. What communities are they serving? What are they helping people to do? If they're going to kids in schools, is there a study that says that kids who have proper footwear are 20% more likely to be at learning at grade level because they're not cold and worrying about how they feel all day? So linking your give backs to tangible human impact is really important. Another watch out if you're ever considering doing a buy one, give one type of engagement is that the products don't always address the symptoms of the issue. And so if you think about the Tom's example, that one is a little bit like, it's got a little white savior to it. So Tom's comes in and brings shoes to communities in developing countries where the kids are going without shoes, which sounds really, really great. But what that also does is it disrupts the growth of the local economy and local craftsmen, because when a big brand comes in and drops off 3,000 pairs of shoes, now the father of 6 and the mom of 2 who are hand making shoes and trying to make a living and raising their community and bringing money into their community are instantly put out of a job. So when you're partnering with an organization and championing a cause, make sure you know the factors that are going into play for what you are trying to affect, and that what you're doing may seem great on the surface, but that it is not starting a chain reaction of other issues that will then also need solving as well. The next example of philanthropy is proceeds from purchase. I'm featuring SandCloud on this one, which is a towel brand that got launched off of Shark Tank, and I was moderately obsessed with Shark Tank a few years ago, so this one was one of the first that came to mind. And what they are is 10% of their profits from the towels and the shirts and accessories that they sell go to various marine conservation organizations. Again, it feels good. I get a really beautiful towel that looks great on Instagram, and I am giving something back, and it makes me feel like I can show off this towel. It gives me social creds. I did something good. Again, here the proceeds are quantifiable in dollars, but not necessarily in impact. And on this one in particular, SandCloud is splitting the proceeds. So splitting the 10% of their profits. So you're already getting a fractional of what their profits are. That's now being split 6 ways between 6 organizations. So it's important to think about where your brand is going to make the biggest impact in your cause marketing efforts. Will you be able to do more good splitting that money between 6 organizations? Or would that money be better given to one organization that then funds smaller projects from there so you can see the cumulative effect? And the last piece of this one is the one we're probably all most familiar with, which is point of sale. And again, that's at the checkout counter. Costco, for example, has a long-time partnership. They've raised $6.9 billion, which is unbelievable, since 1983. And it's because it's easy to give. You're at the checkout counter. They ask you if you want to give $1, if you want to give $2. And so organizations are able to raise large amounts of money via small increments, and the brand or the retailer that's associated with it does get a little bit of the drift of the goodwill from that. But what we started to see in the last couple of years is that there is consumer fatigue. And even though I work in the nonprofit space, I, as a consumer, feel fatigued sometimes about this. I pulled a little quote, did a little Reddit stalking, and people are starting to get irritated. So this one in particular, the last 3 times I've been at Rite Aid, the cashier rounded up without asking me if I wanted to. After the 3rd time, I asked to see a manager. I was made to feel not great for not wanting to donate to a charity and was told that it was my job to tell the cashier I didn't want it. Screw that, I'll go to Walgreens. So people are starting to feel bad if they decide to opt out of these point of sale kind of contributions. And something that studies are actually showing as well is that the more that they're being asked to donate $1, $2, $3 at the checkout, the less people are giving larger, more meaningful gifts to organizations because they think, I've already done my job. I just gave $3 when I went to Walgreens. Why do I need to give $50 to help refugees? So thinking about that from a bigger societal perspective is also really interesting when you're considering what to do about your own cause marketing efforts. This last one is checkbook charity. This can also sometimes be called corporate sponsorships. And these are predefined either one-time or annual monetary contributions to an organization. it doesn't take a ton of effort on the brand side. You make a partnership, you get their logo on their site, they get to put their logo on your site. There's also not a lot of benefit for you as the brand unless you leverage this into something bigger. And this probably has the most limited opportunities for consumer participation. I'm going to go back to the US women's national team for a sec, but this time with Secret. And so they did come out actually after the women's team won with the gender pay gap disparity between the men's team and the women's team. And they did something that it was amazing, right? Immediately responding to current events, they closed that pay gap. They gave $529,000 to the US women's national team. But think about it again. Did it address the root of the issue? It was a great corporate stand, but it was a one-time gift. And what is it actually doing to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future, to rectify the issue? Could there have been an additional amount of money that went to girls' youth soccer clubs? What else could they have done for more impact instead of making a one-time checkbook gift? This is an example of one from Teva, when the Grand Canyon Conservancy was celebrating its 100th anniversary. So Teva partnering with that kind of an organization seems right for their brand. It aligns with their outdoor adventure personality, seems very in tune with what they believe in, and they made a $100,000 one-time donation to them. Okay, they told you what it was for, to restore trails and fund environmental education programs. Great. But what did they do beyond the check? Well, this is where it gets a little weird. They created a product collection, GC100, but from all accounts and everything that I could tell, none of the proceeds of that purchase were going back to the organization. So they leveraged this really good cause partnership strictly for profit and revenue sale and did not extend their partnership with the organization. They could have done it very easily through philanthropy, through portion of proceeds. They could have done it through consumer engagement and on social. Buy this pair of Tevas, wear it out there in the wild, snap a photo and post it, and we'll donate an additional $1. But it just ended with the checkbook. So are any of these approaches actually effective at doing what cause marketing is supposed to do? Increasing profitability and bettering society at the same time. So the answer here is yes, but hold on while I take a drink. The question of impact really has two sides. There's the business impact side. Brands with a social purpose do outperform the stock market average by 120%. So coming out and talking about your purpose and what you believe in does seem to make a difference on the bottom line, which is great. But when you think about the social impact perspective and even the consumer perception perspective, only 34% of consumers really truly believe that what they're doing, the purchases that they're making and the brands they're supporting actually have an impact on the cause that they are interested in. So what gives? There's a big disconnect here. There's a couple things. Consumers need to feel involved and invested in the cause-driven efforts in order to believe in their impact. That goes back really hard to that consumer engagement piece. If you are just talking at your audience, you are not working with them to achieve your goals. Consumers need to know that brands are walking the walk with how they operate, not just talking the talk in their marketing. That goes back to what you say you stand for really being reflected in how you work on an operational level. And consumers are increasingly demanding proof of the results. Money raised is great, but they want to know what that money is actually going to affect in human terms. And really, they're quick to call BS on anything less than this. People see through the smoke and mirrors really easily. So what are the ingredients for getting all of this right? The first is really kind of just a mindset shift. We need to stop thinking about cause marketing as promotions, tactics, or campaigns. Those are loaded inherently with something that is short-term. And we need to start thinking about cause marketing and cause itself as a core pillar of your brand. Here's what's next. If you don't already have some kind of a bigger picture CSR, corporate social responsibility strategy in place, you've got to develop one. Because real impact for your brand and for society starts from the inside out. Marketing is the last step in all of that, not the first. You've got to have the inside good before you can start promoting to the outside. So the 5 keys to success. And we talked about a lot of these already, going through the examples, but kind of wanted to put them together just to have the quick run through of what they are, the hot list. So the first thing is identifying your shared values. Make commitments across your organization. Form strategic partnerships. Engage your consumers, that two-way dialogue. And then shift your success metrics and be open and transparent about how you share them. So when it comes to identifying your shared values, a couple questions you can ask yourself, your brand, your client. What do you believe in? If you're not sure, go back to the origin story of your brand and think about why it was founded in the first place. I'm not sure if any of you have ever read Start With Why from Simon Sinek. If you have not, highly recommend it. It's a quick read, it's a fantastic read, and it will tell you all about getting back to that why. All of this starts with why. Once you know what you believe in, what do your consumers believe in? And think about all of the different issue spaces that are out there. Where the two intersect is a really good starting point for figuring out what your brand should stand for and what those shared values are. But you also need to make sure that you understand the factors that are at play in this space. So thinking about, again, it's not just money that's going to make an impact. There's, in the nonprofit world, there's a construct called the theory of change, which takes into account all of the different functions and factors and people and monetary elements that are needed in order for an organization to achieve its intended goal. And so once you decide on your issue space, it's important to really understand what all those factors are. If you're thinking about higher education, it's not just that higher education is important. Why, or is expensive? Why is it expensive? Why, maybe there's, looking at the shortage of qualified teachers. Why is there a shortage of qualified teachers? And so digging into the issue, because within one parent issue, there can be 22 other issues to get down to, and maybe one of those is really where you want to focus your efforts. Then also think about how your brand is uniquely qualified to address them. So going back to the Body Shop example on this one, it's a beauty brand, but it is uniquely qualified to speak in the environmental conservation space because it has been part of its brand's ethos since the beginning, to only use responsible materials, to not do animal testing, to use packaging that preserves the environment. Next is big, commit across your organization. You have to make sure that your internal practices, again, align with that external social stance. And if they don't, if there are any gaps, people will find them. So start there before you go any further. Next, define your impact goals. 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, or if you need to start even smaller, think 6 month, 12 month, 18 month, but set realistic budgets and timelines to reach them. Cause marketing, just like any other kind of effort that your brand does, is not free. It takes money in order to make an impact. And so make sure that if you're going to go into this, you've got the right people, the right resources, and the right budgets aligned to be able to get those things done. Assign roles and responsibilities for all functions, from operations to HR, and hold everyone in your organization accountable for holding up their end of the bargain. And then when it's time to announce your social commitment, it's really important that that comes from the top down, because there is a perception issue right now in corporate America that CEOs are only in it for the money. And so from a perception standpoint, it's important that the leadership of your organization, of your company, of the brand, is the one to sort of make that public announcement. But internally, ownership of this effort has to come from the bottom up. Every employee needs to feel invested in the cause and want to put in extra effort to make it happen. Forming strategic partnerships. When you're thinking about what the cause you want to support, think about the organizations that you might want to work with. If you look at this lovely chart from McKinsey to the side over here, there is this axis between benefit to society and benefit to business. And you've got your pet projects, which are, ironically, pet projects like the Kills thing, that are no benefit to society and no benefit to business. And you've got philanthropy that has a benefit to society, but maybe less benefit to the business because that's the checkbook charity. The organization gets the $200,000, but the business doesn't really get anything from it. Partnerships have the most impact on both sides. So look for organizations that align with your impact goals and your values. Have really meaningful conversations to understand what they need. And that goes a little bit back to the theory of change I mentioned earlier. What they need is not always a check. Sometimes what they really need the most, what the organization needs the most to make an impact on their community, is man hours. Maybe it's volunteering. Maybe it's in-kind donations. There are 20 other things it could be, but make sure you understand their needs, not just define what you want to give them. And then build relationships with key decision makers in all areas of their work. Speak to their development folks, their fundraising, their comms, their community outreach. That way you're not just doing one-off campaigns with one small little silo of their organization, but you're really able to make a bigger impact across all of the areas that they work in and the communities they serve. Engage consumers, so important. Kind of goes back to the Simon Sinek, start with why again. Once you start talking to consumers, explain your mission. Explain why you're in this space and why you are championing this cause. Explain how you as a brand are going to accomplish these goals, potentially in partnership with that organization. And then be very clear about the what that you are asking someone to do. You need to make sure you're collaborating with your nonprofit partner on all of this to develop whatever kind of initiative that it's going to be, whether it's one of those 5 different approaches that I mentioned, a combination of them, or something else. Leverage their experience and expertise in the issue area to help come up with the idea is. Don't go into a partnership thinking that you've got the problem solved, because you don't. And listen to your consumers, because they're going to help you find the answer along the way. Look for impact opportunities outside traditional marketing channels with them. Engage them in advocacy. Engage them in volunteerism. Have them come up with different ideas for program design or innovation, product innovation. And then going back to the what, be clear about what you are asking your consumers to do so that they know without a doubt how they are going to be a part of this, of solving this issue. And the last piece is shifting your success metrics. So we usually think about things like awareness and reach and conversations and impressions when we're thinking about the successes of our efforts. But in the cause marketing space, it's really important to also think of them in terms of the human impact. Yes, people involved, yes, money raised, but also think about what that money raised allowed you to do. How many goods were delivered? How were lives changed? How were communities helped? The human impact is such an important part of this story. And not just measuring that impact, but then clearly communicating it. Being transparent and following up after any kind of campaign or any kind of initiative to say thank you to the folks who have participated. Show the difference that they made so that the next time you ask them to engage in something, they're going to feel really good about doing it again when they saw the results from the first time. This all seems like a lot, right? But it doesn't have to start huge. You can start at any scale, at any level, and you can do it. So a quick review. I'm not going to read, whoops, that went one too far. I'm not going to read through all of this, but you guys will get a recording of this webinar later. And this is just the quick cheat sheet for Cause Marketing 101, how to bring together intent and approach to create impact. And thinking about making sure that you've got all of pieces in the right place for why you're doing it, then the how you're doing it with your approach, and the 5 keys for success, those key building blocks for the foundation of getting cause marketing right. So what's next? A quick little preview of our second session, which is coming up on November 6th. I'm going to be joined by Amarena Diaz, who is the Director of Digital Marketing and Ecom at Mizuno USA. She and I both used to work together actually a few years back at a digital agency here in Atlanta. And with this one, we're going to talk a little bit about how to make sure that the issue that you are aligning your brand with is the right issue for you, going back to those core values and beliefs of your brand. Making sure it feels authentic, and then also from the brand side, what to look for when partnering with nonprofits to make sure that the partnership and the efforts are going to be beneficial for both sides. All right, so now it is Q&A time. Okay, looks like we've got a couple questions up over here. So this first question I see, from Melvin Carcenti, talking about real impact, do you think there's a need to educate organizations, nonprofit and for-profit, and individuals, but also media, to push them past vanity metrics? Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. And I do. I think media outlets really like to jump on the vanity metrics. They look at the millions reached and they look at the impression stats, and that's still, especially if you even think about the award industry or the award circuit and the advertising industry, that's really the benchmarks that people look at. And we do, I think, need to start educating people more, educating the media, educating anybody who's covering this kind of work about those are not necessarily the metrics to be talking about, and they're not necessarily the metrics that really determine the success and the social impact of a campaign. How do we do that? I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to be more targeted sometimes as marketers ourselves in just when we put out press releases about these initiatives. I think it probably starts there, about us ourselves talking about them in terms of human impact. And if we as an industry start doing that, the media hopefully will start picking up on it. A good question. Thank you. Okay, it's a question from Carly. For consumer engagement, what does it mean to give them multiple options? So it's kind of like if you work with or have ever volunteered or given to just a nonprofit organization, think about the multiple ways that nonprofits will give to get you engaged. So you could be a one-time donor, you could be a recurring donor, you could volunteer, you could give in-kind donations. They may ask you to like or share social content. So thinking about that in the same way from a cause marketing partnership. So for instance, I'm trying to think, there was one example that I had in there. I don't remember which one it was off the top of my head, but it was the advocacy one with the Body Shop. So they were asking for signatures, but the way that they leveraged influencers, they were also creating content. And I'm sure there were boundless CTAs about share this and get others to talk about it. Okay, so people have various levels of, various thresholds of how much they want to get involved in social causes. And so you need to give them a spectrum of ways to get involved, from the super easy, which is like the armchair advocacy. I'm going to sit on my Instagram feed and I'm going to like something that a brand put out in partnership with an organization. That's one way to get involved. Be clear about it. Share our content so more people can see it. But then also give them opportunities. Or buy our product, our thing, whatever it is that your service is, and a portion of the proceeds is going to go to this organization. Or get involved in hashtag, and we will donate something to this organization. Or want to know more? Go to our site and learn about the organization's mission. So being able to give people multiple ways in allows them to choose the path to engage with your brand and with the nonprofit that feels right to them. So it's not just kind of like a one size fits all for everybody. All right, we have another question from Sarah. She says, you mentioned how Nike's campaign around the women's soccer team fell flat and felt a bit hypocritical because of their history of not treating pregnant athletes well. How do you suggest brands look inward and make sure they are practicing what they plan to preach before investing in a cause marketing campaign? That's a great question. I think it comes down to when a brand decides that this is something they want to get into, it goes back to the full organizational commitment. And so getting into the CSR cause marketing space isn't something that should just be decided on by leadership, and it isn't something that should just be decided on by the marketing department. Everybody throughout the organization needs to come together and have conversations before this process even gets started. And so when you think about the values of your organization and the beliefs of your organization and are thinking about, okay, this is sort of where we think we want to play, you have to talk to everybody. Look at there are super simple things you could do, right? Like look at your HR handbook and just kind of think about the internal processes, the internal practices. I would also say talk to your employees, because the employees are going to know these things better than anybody, how you as an organization actually treat them. And if there are things that they're like, well, this could actually be a little better, that's a sign that you need to do a little more work. If you look even at social sentiment and see that people are not so keen on the way that some things are being done or have issues or they're seeing gaps in your service, that's also a sign like, let's do a little bit more digging and get to the root of this to make sure that everything that we're doing on the inside from an operational standpoint is where it should be before we come out and make this a marketing effort. All right, I don't see any other questions. Amber, is there anything else you want to jump in with?
No, I think you covered it all.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here today. It's 5 minutes to 3, so hopefully this didn't take up too much of your afternoon, but I do want to remind you, we've got a couple more webinars coming up. We've got the one in November and then 2 more coming up in 2020. And the topic of conversation with cause marketing is only getting stronger. So keep your eyes out. Look for what other brands are doing and doing well. And at any point in time, if you've got questions, please give me a shout. My email is really super simple. It's amy@mediacause.org. And I'm happy to chat with anybody at any point in time, bounce some ideas around, and help us change your business and change the world.